Okay, great. Our first podcast, our first attempt here. We'll see.
That's true. We will see.
Trying something new here, folks.
Yeah, we're trying something new. You might recognize our faces or voices from TikTok or Instagram or the background of legislative committee hearings. We are Elevate Utah at Elevate_Utah on all the things. We talk about local Utah politics, and a lot of people have been asking for us to do a longer form breakdown of what's going on every single week. So here we are to try to do that.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about in the first week of legislative session. So we are going to break down all the things that happened this week, do some deeper dives into some of our most memorable moments, and we're going to try and do this once a week.
Yes. I'm Gabby Finlayson.
And I'm Jackie Morgan.
Okay.
Great.
Will you start by telling us what happened to you last week before the session started?
Okay, so I go to the coffee shop every day to get Gabby and I coffees, and
that's why we're never going to be able to buy a house.
Truly. Shout out Cafe Espresso. And I was at the coffee shop and chatting with my girl, and she was like, how's everything going? You doing good? What's up with your life? And I was like, oh, well, legislative session is starting next week, so it's, about to get really crazy. She was like, oh, really? That's crazy. She's like, so nobody's going to be coming into the coffee shop anymore. And I was like, not fully processing what was happening.
Other people still come. It's fine.
Yeah, I was like, I'll probably come earlier in the day, actually, because, legislative session. And we continue to have this conversation, and she is continually talking about what I understood later is that she understood me to say the recession is coming next week.
The recession's starting, you guys. Get ready. Get prepared.
And the fact that she believed me to be qualified to note and predict the recession was coming next week is
invest in gold
incredible.
Today, okay? Today.
But I mean, she's not exactly wrong. It is like some impending doom. And I did have to go back the next week and say, I am really concerned about our conversation last week.
She
and
drained her 401k already.
She said, I've been thinking about it nonstop. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I really meant the legislative session.
Well, just as depressing, but maybe not as impactful on your investments.
It could be.
The session did start this week. That was this week.
That was this week on Tuesday. It's short week. This was our shortest week of the session.
It felt eternal.
It did. Okay, so the first week of session is like syllabus week of college. They give a lot of speeches, talk about what they're going to do, pass a lot of House rules, bills about
the state of the judiciary, the state of the state address.
Yes, the Senate president and the Speaker of the House both give speeches. They all fight over their seating arrangement of where they're sitting. The Greencoats, who we can talk about more later, are stocking up on taffy for people to come up to the Capitol.
They're like the nice old guys that tell you where to go.
Yeah.
The Greencoats. They wear green coats, if that wasn't evident.
It's an interesting first week. I mean, not a lot gets done, but we do get a glimpse of what their priorities are going to be for the rest of the session, and we're going to see what leadership is pushing through in the first week to really know what they want to get done.
Well, I mean, not a lot gets done, but a lot gets done at the same time. A lot of bills get filed. You get to see a lot of their early priorities, like you mentioned, but they're moving quick. In the last few years, they've been trying to get through all of their big controversial stuff as early as possible in the session, and so we definitely saw some of that, the glimpses, the beginnings of all of that.
Yeah, so I think we have a good sense of what their priorities are. We've seen a lot of immigration bills. We've seen a lot of bills related to the judiciary and to court packing. We've seen a lot of bills related to LGBTQ rights, and we're going to talk about all of those in more depth.
But like they always say their priorities are like really not the things that they are prioritizing. Like every time they start doing this, like the governor is saying that his priority is housing and like children's literacy, and now they're sort of back to talking about water and nuclear energy, and yet none of those bills have really done anything in the first week of session. They just don't want to say that packing the Supreme Court is their top priority and deporting people of color. Oh, as a little treat, we always we enjoy talking about some of the bills that we have internally labeled as, quote, pure crazy, because they're better and more interesting, and they don't have as depressing of impacts on people. So let's start there.
Also, in the last couple of years, we've gotten a new cohort of legislators,
yes.
especially in the House.
Yes.
that are some
primarily women.
Yes, female conspiracy theorist Maha homeschooling moms.
It seems like a lot of people that got real stoked on politics during like 2020 to 2022.
Yeah, and their top priorities are clearly banning books, getting all sensitive materials out of schools, and all of these strange COVID conspiracy bills that
the Maha moms are in the legislature.
They reveal themselves in this legislation.
They have found themselves. Yes, they sure have.
So we're seeing 2 bills this session that both have to do with raw milk regulation.
Or lack of regulation.
Yes. Is more accurate. And trying to increase the ability for raw milk to be sold, especially in things like cow shares.
The problem with raw milk is that if there is one cow that has a disease, and these big factory farms, these bigger farms, that they put all of the milk that they milk from all the cows into like giant buckets, and so it can infect a lot of different milk that from cows that are healthy, basically.
Yes, and pasteurizing is the process that removes that.
And you pasteurize it, you heat it up a little bit. It's not like chemicals. It gets rid of all of that. But if you're doing that, if you have a lot of cows that you are not pasteurizing their milk, and you have one cow that is sick, then everyone that will get sick that's drinking that milk. And I'm pretty sure cow share programs where they have like, you have like smaller numbers of cows. We're gonna have to cut all this out because I don't know if this is 100% right. But it's like the smaller... It's like super small farms, so you can test the cows more regularly for their like health, basically, if you're going to drink raw milk. But the problem with raw milk is that it is obviously, it spreads disease. Like children used to die all the time from getting diseases like listeria and like tuberculosis from drinking raw milk. But the thing that I find more interesting is that last session, we saw a lot of really similar kind of Maha related bills that were, related to food dye and cutting SNAP benefits. People that are on SNAP benefits can't buy unhealthy foods and things like that, which is sort of where the Maha movement, where RFK Jr. was talking a lot about those things last year. And then this year, since then, we have seen a lot of other things come up, like raw milk becoming a big part of the Maha movement. And so now we have legislation directly reflecting what these women that are running a lot of these bills are seeing online in their friend groups or, in these like mom discussion boards, whatever you want to call them, that is now being turned into legislation.
Yep. And making it easier for them to do that and then potentially have impacts on other people. Similar to the vaccine mandate bill that makes it easier for parents to opt out of vaccines for their children, because right now, before your child is enrolled in school, if a parent wants to opt out of it, they need to watch a module about the safety of vaccines and why we have them. And Nicolene Peck, one of our favorite representatives, is running a bill that would remove that requirement so that we can more easily have people opting out of vaccines, which then is having health impacts for so many more people. And we are one of the highest measles outbreaks in the country right now.
Yes. Yeah, it's just this continued, I think, like moving away from caring about actual facts and actual science that has been proven and tested. And I think that's like the bigger problem right now with a lot of people in politics generally, is that we're not actually consuming firsthand information. We are taking in takes on opinions on facts, and that is leading us to a really bad place where we don't have like a baseline of truth or information anymore. We have HB 96, which is an ivermectin amendment, which basically would let anyone go to any pharmacy and there's a standing order for you to get horse medicine, ivermectin, from any pharmacy.
Without a prescription from a doctor.
You don't even have to talk to a doctor. You can just say, hello, I would like some horse drugs. Not the good ones, not the fun ones at that. And you can just get it because of a conspiracy theory that started online. And apparently the people running these pieces of legislation are unconcerned with the actual impacts or the needs of people in the healthcare system. Not ivermectin, but sure, why not pass a bill to say, anyone can have horse pills anytime they would like.
Well, and the problem is that standing orders are really important for things like Plan B, and maybe we shouldn't say this because the legislators that are watching this are now gonna get rid of the standing order for Plan B, but
if any of them have made it this far, I'll be impressed.
But these things are really important, and then now they're being co-opted for crazy things. And what are people going to do with their ivermectin?
Does that mean that a pharmacy has to have it stocked?
Yeah.
So they have to like save, every pharmacy would have to save shelf space?
Yes.
For ivermectin?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie.
I watched The Pit, so I am a doctor.
She's a doctor. Exactly.
You want to talk about chemtrails?
There's a lot of things that when you start a job that you never imagined that you would do. One of them is TikTok videos. Another one is a podcast. And the third is knowing anything about what a chemtrail is, which I had to learn like 3 days ago.
You mean what was it called? Hold on.
Like the intentional release of chemicals by an aircraft?
The solar geoengineering.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, this bill would make releasing chemtrails, quote unquote, quote, air quote, chemtrails, a felony. And to be clear, that is not happening. No one is doing that. Similar to a lot of these other conspiracy theory bills like this, state sovereignty bill saying that international organizations don't have any authority in Utah. It's not happening. That is not happening currently. But why not legitimize it and put it into law instead of doing things like making sure that, kids have free school lunch or that people don't die of breathing arsenic because the Great Salt Lake is gone. But that's fine. We'll use your 45 days to make sure that chemtrails are a felony.
Some resurgence of some other fun bills from last year. BYOB, one of our favorite bills we talked about quite a lot. BYOB standing for Bring Your Own Blood to the hospital.
Bring your own bag of blood.
This Lisa Shepard's bill allows you... Wait, Lisa Shepard? Kristen Chevrier.
I think it's Chevrier.
I think it is Chevrier.
Kristen Chevrier.
Chevrier. That allows you to bring your own blood to the hospital so that you do not have to be transfused with vaccine infected blood.
That dirty vaccine blood. Yeah, this was a whole big thing online. So Kristen Chevrier, also before she was in office, she founded and ran this like anti-vaccine nonprofit educational whatever the hell. And now she's really bringing that energy to the legislature. And on her website, and kind of deep down, it talks about this sort of blood purity sort of thing, which then sent us on a deep dive. But this is a real thing that I did not know about, that people were concerned about getting blood transfusions. To be clear, this is only in a non-emergency situation, but that they're concerned that they're going to be infected with nanochips or autism or something if they get a blood transfusion that has vaccinated blood in it.
But the real problem here is also the liability. So last year when this bill was moving through session, there were some changes to it that removed the liability from hospitals and doctors if for some reason when you bring your own blood you get a communicable disease. And like
no.
And so now the bill does remove the liability for those hospitals.
Well, that seems fair. It's not their fault that someone brought a bucket of blood in and said, please put this in my body.
Have some questions about the storage and the transportation, and are we keeping this in our own fridges? Are we bringing it in a cooler?
A bank or something, like a blood bank.
I don't know, and I don't care to know anymore.
The answer is you shouldn't do this, and you should probably trust your doctor to know what blood you should have before you decide to put it into your veins.
It does make for one of the most fun names of our bills that we've talked about this year. So
yes, deeply entertaining. BYOB.
I guess we can talk about some of the bills that actually moved this week and made some progress. So a couple of the bills that have to do with the environment, we've seen have committee hearings and actually move off the floor. One of these is HB 16, which is solar amendments. This is also a bill that we saw last year, and it changes the laws so that you cannot build solar on any land that is grazable or farmable. And
like large solar plants, though.
Yeah,
not
large,
like one solar plant, but like
yeah
ones.
Which is an interesting bill. I think there you can see the sides at work here, because you have on one hand farmers who do care about having farming land, and we are seeing very large solar plants taking over what land that is could be used for farming, and obviously is very important for us to be able to eat food and survive.
For the governor to grow alfalfa.
and for Spencer Cox's alfalfa. But also at the same time, adding more restrictions to our ability to build solar is therefore impacting our ability to have clean energy. And so you've seen both sides of this. during the debate in the committee hearing and on the floor, which I think is interesting and is somewhat of a bipartisan bill on both sides. We had both Republicans and Democrats voting for it and against it in both of those. And I think there's some interesting arguments on both sides.
One of the other bills that was brought to our attention by some of the really great environmental organizations was House Bill 60. This is a bill that affects water. And so this changes who is a potential litigant in a lawsuit against the state giving out new water rights. So water rights is one of the most like complicated and controversial things that we see come up in the legislature, funny enough. But you have to be granted or buy water rights, which means if you have property, you have to be able to use the water on it. You don't just like get access to it because you have water near your property. And there are a lot of lawsuits that happen when new water rights are given out because people can say that they have been harmed, because you have to prove harm to file a lawsuit. This makes it a lot harder to prove that you were directly harmed by new water rights. And on top of that, it allows more diversion of upstream water to be diverted. It allows for more diversions, I guess.
Away from the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, which means that less water gets to the Great Salt Lake. There's less water in our rivers and our streams, and then everything that's downstream, it allows more diversion from that. And during the committee hearing, they did what they always do, which is say that this is a technical cleanup bill. We're just trying to streamline the process, and this isn't going to impact anybody. No one worry. It's all good.
It's a simple bill.
This is a simple bill that will dry up the lake. That this will impact everyone's ability to live in this state because it will impact how much water is in the Great Salt Lake. And we shouldn't be overlooking a lot of these things that sound simple or sound like they're too complicated for you to understand, because it really does have a huge impact on everyone's well-being. And it's really annoying when they just don't tell the truth. I guess you could say.
And for everyone's information, that bill, as of Friday, is on the House floor. So it is waiting to be voted on the House floor. And so if you do care about the Great Salt Lake and these issues, contacting your House representatives right now is the best thing that you can do.
Except it'll probably get voted on Monday morning, then we'll go to the Senate.
Well,
that's fine.
For our Monday morning listeners.
That are definitely listening to this podcast.
One of the biggest topics we've seen everywhere. Let me start. Yeah. Everywhere in the last year, I guess, since the Trump administration is obviously immigration. And we have seen the exact same thing at the legislature and seen numerous bills that are impacting immigrants, immigrant families, and various things to make people's lives harder.
Also, not just immigrants or immigrant families, but also like naturalized citizens or people that are citizens whose parents might be immigrants, right? Like anyone that looks like an immigrant, specifically a Latino immigrant, this is going to impact their life.
Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest ones that we saw this week that is making quick progress through the legislature is HB 209, which is a voting rights bill. Mm-hmm. And this is Utah's version of the SAVE Act, which is moving on the federal level, which creates essentially a bifurcated ballot. So people have to provide proof of their U.S. citizenship in order to vote. And if they cannot provide proof, then they are only allowed to vote in federal elections. And it creates a separation of the ballot. But it also increases a lot of voter ID laws. It makes the process much harder. It also makes it easier for clerks to remove people off of the voter rolls. Mm-hmm. And they have to defend their citizenship within 10 days of being flagged in the system. There are so many pieces of this bill that are so concerning.
Yes. Well, the other thing, too, is that, I mean, this is a big family-friendly state, allegedly. A lot of people get married, they change their name. If you have a different name, you could get flagged in the system. If you are someone who is a naturalized citizen, who you were in some sort of government database before you got your citizenship, you could get flagged in this system. There's a lot of ways that they're kind of cross-checking across different government databases, and a lot of people get wrapped up in this getting kicked off of the voter rolls, essentially, even if they are citizens, even if they've always been a citizen, even if they, have done everything to prove their citizenship, you could still get flagged and you would have to prove that you are a citizen within 10 days or not get a ballot. Did you see what the lieutenant governor talked about today?
No.
So Ben Winslow from Fox 13 asked Deidre Henderson if there was any report ever in Utah of a non-citizen actually voting in any election. Mm-hmm. Do you want to guess how many?
Zero. Yeah.
Never. This has never happened. And this is what happens every time with these voting rights bills, is that they say that this is technical, it's supposed to be clean up, we're trying to make sure we have integrity in our voting rights system, which is super ironic in Utah because our vote by mail system has been the blueprint for other states because it is so good and it is so resistant to any sort of fraud. Like
and everybody loves it.
And everybody loves it. And because it's so good, this is a bill that is trying to solve a non-existent problem. Again. Shocker. Sorry. Spoiler alert. This has never happened. But yeah, like they're just trying to solve a non-existent problem at the expense of more people of color, more immigrants, more naturalized citizens not voting at all or having to jump through a million more hoops to vote than anybody else in this state.
It's crazy to me too because there's so many good proposals for interesting positive voting rights bills.
Totally.
Like there's a couple of bills that allow, not in Utah, but nationwide, that allow 16-year-olds to vote in only school board elections.
I love that.
Or for non-citizens to vote in local municipal elections because municipal elections have big impacts on non-citizens. And so,
and they're still paying taxes.
Yeah, exactly. And so these bills I think are really, there's cool legislation that could be in this realm that is not just attempting to kick more people off the voter rolls and get them not to vote.
But that's not the priority.
Well, obviously.
Which is the problem. It's like, yes, there are so many ways that you could make voting rights more accessible. More people could participate in democracy. I mean, even the most basic one of making the election day a state holiday, right? Like, there are things that can be done to make this happen, but that has to be the motivation, and that is clearly not the motivation of the majority in the legislature.
Nope.
This is less fun than our short videos.
I know, this is kind of depressing, I'll be honest. Sorry.
No one gets to vote. There are a lot of other immigration bills that are really not that creative. A lot of bills that we've seen either in other states or we've seen run before. There are multiple bills on driver privilege cards or unlicensed driver sort of laws. Meaning that if someone is not a U.S. citizen for any reason, there are a lot of reasons why someone would be in this country and they're not a citizen, they can't get a driver's license. You have to get what's called a driver privilege card. It's like essentially, it's basically like a driver's license.
Yeah, and for safety reasons, so that we know that people are qualified to be driving on the roads.
And
it's
so
a great system.
Can also, I don't know, have insurance as a thought. Yeah, so there's a bunch of bills affecting that, which we can talk about at a later time if we want to do that. There are also a couple of bills that are impacting how much money and the cost that immigrant families are going to have to pay. One of them is a bill that Stephanie Grecius ran last year that she brought back. This is a tax on international money transfers. It's a 2% fee that you have to pay if you are not a citizen in this country or you can't prove that you have the right, like state issued IDs or whatever. And if you want to send money across international lines to like your family or friends or whatever, people in a different country, you have to pay a 2% fee. But if you are a U.S. citizen, you don't have to do that. So this is just an additional tax on people that have come to this country to work and to like make a better life for themselves and to try and help support their families. They have to pay an additional 2%, but nobody else does.
Which is interesting. And the way that they do this, they never just flat out say the reason that they're running this bill, but they're like, oh, well, we're just going to change the list of the IDs that are allowed when you're sending these money transfers, instead of just directly saying their goals with these bills and covering it up by saying, well, we just need to clarify the code with exactly what IDs are valid and not, is embarrassing for them. And because all of the bills are copy-paste language from ALEC or any other national think tanks that have drafted these and are running them in other states.
Yes.
And they're not putting in the work to think of these creative concepts. They're just pulling them from the National Republican Party.
Yeah, that's right.
So there was a good bill that was on the agenda in one of the committee hearings this week, and this was a bill being run by Senator Nate Bluen, who is also running for Congress, and he ran a bill that would have banned ICE from places like schools and churches and libraries, and it also would prohibit ICE agents from wearing masks. Pretty simple couple of things that the bill did.
This could have been way more intense.
Yes.
Way more intense.
Yes. And Senator Bluen has never passed a bill at the legislature, and so his bill getting a committee hearing in the first week of session is already a sign that majority was up to something.
Yeah.
And so they put it on the agenda, clearly in an effort to just publicly kill his bill in front of everyone.
And to humiliate him while he's running for Congress.
Yeah.
As a Democrat.
Yeah. But what was really fascinating about this committee hearing was the attitude that the Republicans had during the committee hearing. There were so many touching testimonies, public comments, stories that people brought in, and the way that Senator Weiler and Brady Brammer,
members of the committee,
making jokes the entire time.
One of the last public comments was someone talking about how all of these members of the committee that were listening to public comment are ostensibly Christians or, religious people. And they were saying, how can you look at what's happening in this country? How can you look at the people in this country that are being murdered by ICE and the kids that are being kidnapped and all of the lives that are being ruined outside of the actual deportation of people who have committed crimes and are here in this country illegally? Everything else around it. How can you look at all of that and still call yourself a follower of Christ? And we'll play the clip.
Are you aware that there's not a single country in this world that doesn't deport illegal immigrants? I just want to say I'm pretty sure that heaven has a immigration policy, but that's just my belief.
Todd Weiler, the chair of the committee, never seen this man in a better mood.
An insane thing to say, first of all, related to everything that is happening with ICE right now in this country, with people who are losing their lives, with people who are going through some of the worst and scary times that they've ever felt just for existing in a place that they've always existed.
The comment itself, the joke itself, is horrible. It's callous. It's so insensitive. But I think the bigger problem, I guess, with it is not what he said, but it is the fact that these senators, this senator, and the people that didn't say anything are so far removed from the reality that other people in this country are experiencing. After listening to hours of public comment, asking people begging to be protected, to help their community, to not be discriminated against, that you can feel so unremoved, so not impacted, and so callous towards people who are actually having these experiences and these horrible encounters with ICE and people being murdered, people's families being torn apart, children being detained and taken away from their families, that you can make a joke about it and pretend like it doesn't have anything to do with you, because it probably doesn't. There is no one that I know that has ever had real interactions with real friendships, relationships with immigrants and immigrant families, has seen their kids, has had dinner with them, whatever it is, that would make a joke like that if you've seen the impact that this is having on people. Not to mention that so many immigrant communities, Latino communities in this state, we are seeing that there are kids that are not going to school. Attendance rates are dropping because kids are afraid that either they are going to get deported, their family is going to get deported while they're at school. We've seen people not calling the police because they're afraid that if they call the police to report a crime like domestic violence, that they will not be helped, that they will be seen as the problem and that they will get deported instead of protected like they should be. People are not going to hospitals. They're not getting the care that they need because it would be easier for them to have to deal with a disease than it would be to have to deal with ICE.
Mm-hmm. And the implication of the comment of heaven has an immigration policy is that everyone else can get kicked out of wherever except for me.
Yeah. He's definitely in heaven in his version of this.
Yeah.
Just like he's in this country.
But who is the immigration policy in heaven? Who is the immigration policy in the United States? It's everyone else. I'm safe because I'm special and I'm different. But the implication here is so othering to anyone that is not in power, that is not a white straight legislator from the state of Utah who can do whatever he wants and not look out for any other communities.
Well, every Republican on this committee is a white American born person that does not have an accent, that they will very likely never have a negative encounter with ICE. And it was really uncomfortable to watch Senator Luz Escamilla, who is the minority leader in the Senate, She's the first immigrant ever elected to the legislature from Utah. She's a Mexican immigrant. She's an incredible woman. She's been there for a very long time, an amazing legislator. And for her to have to sit there next to all of her colleagues who are snickering, who are, rolling their eyes, who are making jokes about her experience, essentially, and her community's experience, her family's experience, people that come to her and tell her their experience that they have had with ICE. It was awful. I mean, I feel so bad for her, but also I'm so glad that at least she is there to understand and be empathetic, because clearly nobody else is.
And she is the type of person that has been working together with these legislators, even if they don't treat her well, to pass bills that actually help people. Like, many of Luz's bills focus on childcare and increasing access to childcare. A lot of her bills focus on, school lunches and children being able to afford basic services. She doesn't focus her bills on immigration issues or
because she can't.
Yeah, because they're everyday issues that actually impact people too, and she's concerned about helping people, not targeting communities. And she has spent her entire career working together to build positive relationships, and then to continue to sit there and work with these legislators for the rest of the next session and however many other years is just like very painful.
And impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Todd Weiler should be ashamed of himself. He should apologize publicly for what he said. I think it's been a very long time since we've seen something so offensive be said by a senator during a committee hearing.
Yeah, and he is the type of person who says offensive stuff online all the time. He is not afraid to tweet horrific things, but oftentimes in person, he's a fairly reasonable legislator in his policy. But seeing how he reacted both to the ICE bill and the other bills during that committee hearing was really revealing of what he actually believes.
Yeah. I am embarrassed that I expected better from him, of all people.
Yeah. And needless to say, that bill was killed in committee and will not be moving forward.
No, it will not.
Yeah. Wrap up immigration. Okay. I need another beer.
Look, we're doing our best to make this entertaining and not super depressing, but sometimes it's depressing. So that's how it goes sometimes, I guess. If they would do better stuff, they would do more fun things. We could talk about fun things.
We could, but
we used all the raw milk stuff already, so we can't do that.
And I've always said raw milk is fun.
Raw milk, it is as fun as gambling, I suppose.
That's good.
Is that good? Yeah, I liked it. Thank you so much.
Since we got our decision on Prop 4 and the redistricting and our congressional maps, the legislature has been up in arms because they ruled against the legislature. They said that the legislature overreached when they threw out the voter-approved ballot initiative from 2018, also known as Prop 4, and they decided to draw their own congressional maps.
That were not
gerrymandered.
Fair.
And now the judge in the case has implemented a new fair map that they are incredibly upset about.
Why, Jackie? Why? It sounds good.
Well, because somebody's taking away their power. It's crazy how that works. So they are upset. Matt McPherson, one of the representatives who is in one of the most competitive seats and should be running moderate legislation, said he was going to file impeachment paperwork on the judge about 4 minutes after the decision came out.
Yeah, no shot he read that decision. Also, he's not a lawyer, so how he would know that this is unconstitutional? Also, nothing that a judge rules as unconstitutional, to be clear. They interpret the Constitution, which he wasn't even doing. That was the Supreme Court. Not the point. But this was a long decision. It was, like 4 minutes after. He had that in the drafts ready to go.
And also, where has that been? They haven't filed impeachment paperwork.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. But what is clear is that they are finding plenty of other ways to retaliate on the judiciary.
Continuing to do that. Let's not forget that last year they also ran a ton and passed a ton of legislation that was entirely to weaken the judiciary's independence. A co-equal branch of government they are infringing upon. Where are all of my people that lectured me about the Federalist Papers now? Where are you? Because I haven't seen you out here defending the judge and this co-equal branch of government. So please stand up. I'm ready for the conservative arguments.
The Constitution.
Yeah, remember You know the worst person that was in your government class that carried around a pocket constitution? Where are you? I'm waiting.
Can I just say, one of my very best friends, when she was on dating apps, she had in one of her profiles, I don't remember what the prompt was, but it was like, what do you have always with you? And she had her pocket constitution as a joke, and it attracted some of the worst people.
The nemesis in college. He was the chair or the president of the Turning Point USA chapter, and I was the vice president of the College Democrats at the time. And he and I would get into it. We had all like classes together almost every semester. And he would always whip out his pocket constitution. And he always wore a suit with an American flag tie. He was insufferable. But I haven't seen him out there in the world talking about how, we're disrespecting the Constitution and infringing on a co-equal branch of government's independence. But anyways, what does the bill do?
What does bill do?
What does bill do?
So one of the biggest bills that we have seen this session that has already made a ton of progress in the first week is the court packing bill. This is the bill that expands the Supreme Court from 5 justices to 7 justices, and it expands the appellate courts from 7 justices to 9 justices.
And is this being run by the same people that lost their fucking minds when Joe Biden floated potentially expanding the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Just want to be sure.
They also, I do want to be fair that they have sprinkled in a lot of things in this bill that are very good. So the reason that the legislature is giving that they are running this bill is that the Supreme Court and many of the courts in Utah are backed up. The trial dates are slow, cases are slow. It's really hard to get an opinion. It takes a really long time. And so they are arguing that expanding the number of justices is more efficient. It will get more cases done. And then they've also sprinkled a lot of things in the bill that are really good for the courts, like adding more staff capacity, adding more justices to the lower courts, more judges. I've learned the differences between judges and just justices. Very important. Justices are the Supreme Court, judges, other courts.
That's right. Don't yell at us again, please.
Sorry. But they are doing these things that will benefit eventually the judiciary as a whole, but they are adding it on top of this one very important thing that is expanding the Supreme Court. And the thing about expanding the Supreme Court is that it actually makes the decisions harder, because the Supreme Court doesn't act like any other court. It isn't just a number of judges that are making decisions on their own. And
one judge.
Yeah, and adding judges means that they'll be able to move more cases. They act as a single unit. And so adding more justices just makes those debates and conversations harder, because they have to add 2 more people into the mix of being able to come to a conclusion.
And like scheduling logistics, like on top of that.
Yeah, we have talked about this, is adding more chefs in a kitchen when you're understaffed with waiters and hostesses. And so adding more chefs is not going to help you to be able to get food out more quickly. You need to add more of the support staff to do it.
Do you think they're going with this justification of they're too slow to make decisions because the lawsuits that are filed against the legislature, or like cases that the legislature is involved in, are taking a long time and they're mad about that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
and
this is not a problem, but this seems like the easiest justification for them. They're the first thing in their brain is well, I'm mad that this decision on the maps took too long, so this must be a problem for everybody. This seems like the easiest argument.
Which is crazy, because the people that are impacted by the decision taking too long are the voters that passed the initiative in 2018. This has been a decade of my life that I've worked on this, who have finally gotten maps in 2026. So they can be upset. That's fine. But also, the other bills that they passed, the bills that they passed last legislative session, allow their appeals to go directly to the Supreme Court. Hey, crazy that the one they want to expand is the Supreme Court, where their cases are going. And it allows them an easier process to be able to appeal these decisions and continue to push this in the exact branch of government that they can control, and they can appoint and decide how many people are on, so that they can get different outcomes in the cases that they have put in front of them.
Right. Yeah, the problem isn't necessarily adding more justices to the court. There are a lot of states, which they brought up a ton during the committee hearing.
Yes.
There are a ton of states that have 7 or 9 justices on their Supreme Court. And that's not an issue, like whatever. Like the legislature constitutionally gets to decide how many justices are on the court. The issue is the timing here that they are trying to do this, because the state for the past several years has had many high-profile cases in front of the Supreme Court, and they have been ruled against very consistently because they keep passing laws and they keep doing things that are unconstitutional. And so it's not that it's bad to have more justices. The problem is that they are trying to add more justices that they can appoint for political reasons to give them the outcomes that they are looking for. They are trying to give themselves a 4-3 majority, where right now they do not have that. And they're trying to just push all these things through. And we've seen them get ruled against on redistricting and this gerrymandering case, on abortion cases. The abortion ban is still currently in litigation. The ban on trans kids playing sports also still in litigation in front of the Supreme Court. Like, the only reason they are doing this is to try and pack the court with people that will give them outcomes that they want.
Yes. And as a reminder, one of our good friends, Eli McCann, pointed out this week that 100% of the judges on the Supreme Court have been appointed by a Republican governor. 100% of the judges on the Supreme Court have been confirmed by a Republican Senate. So they've already controlled this. And the idea that we have separate but equal branches of government is crazy, because they already control who gets to be on it. They control what happens if there's a vacancy. They get to control who is on the committee that then appoints it to, who makes the recommendations to the governor, who then appoints the people. They control every single step of the process.
And they're trying to change the appointment process right now with a different piece of legislation that would allow the governor to ignore the independent nominating commission for new justices and appoint whoever he wants. So maybe the point here is not to have a better process to be confirmed by a Republican Senate, but just to have more people that are worse judges that will not look at the Constitution or the actual case as much and just look at the governor and the legislature and say, don't worry, I have your back. I got you. I know what we're supposed to be doing here, and just rule in the right way that gives the legislature free rule to do whatever they want.
So this bill has made a lot of progress this week. It already passed the Senate committee. It was heard on the Senate floor for the first time. It will be heard again on the Senate floor probably on Monday, would be my guess, and voted on, and then it will then go through the same process in the House. So it will have a House committee likely next week. It seems like this bill is moving very quickly. So would recommend, if you are interested in getting involved, to pay attention to the House committee, because you can give public testimony, you can comment on this bill, and then it will move to the House side, the House floor after that.
Yes. And the best case scenario, if you are going to talk to your legislator, or the best outcome that the legal professionals want, which we should be listening to, is to move forward like 2/3 of this bill that are really, really helpful. The expanding of the appellate court, the district court, the trial courts, more staff, more support. That is really necessary and really needed, and they have been asking for that for a very long time. That piece should move forward independently, and they should separate this from the expansion of the Supreme Court, which they should not be doing, especially right now. Even if this was in good faith, the timing of this is way too suspect and looks way too political. And the problem is that the courts, that branch of government, they rely, their legitimacy relies on public opinion and people believing that this is not a political branch of government, and this directly will tear that apart.
Yeah. And this is not the only attack that we are seeing this year. The other couple of bills that we are seeing, one increases the ability for judges to be retained when they are on the ballot. They have to get 67% in their election for retention, which is crazy considering that legislators have to get 50% plus one vote in order to be elected and make these laws for the state. And they want to increase the threshold for the judges to 67%. The exact same people that cannot campaign, cannot talk to voters,
can't raise money,
can't do anything to prove that they are doing a good job. But guess who controls all of the perception around the court? Oh, the legislature. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that's a constitutional amendment that is potentially going to be on the ballot. They also have another bill that they're running right now that would allow them to impeach judges or call snap elections for judicial retention. So if I think that Jackie is a judge that is doing a bad job, I can just, as the legislature, say, you know what, we think you're doing a bad job. We are going to call a snap election for you, and we're going to put you on the ballot alone by yourself, and now you have to get 67% in order to keep your job.
I imagine who they want to do that for.
I wonder.
That's crazy.
Queen Gibson. Yeah. Speaking of packing the court so you can pass more unconstitutional shit, let's talk about Trevor Lee, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. If you are unfamiliar, I'm about to ruin your day, unfortunately.
You know what is going to ruin my day every single day at the legislature?
What?
Trevor Lee's mustache.
God. Yes.
Can we put a picture up for everyone?
We will put a picture up. Okay, so Trevor Lee is a representative in the House from Davis County. He is someone who used to run a online meme account that would promote white supremacy, Nazi stuff, like just like some of the worst things you've ever seen. And his legislation and his comments and his rhetoric since then, even since he's not been running this anonymous little
meme
factory, has been exactly the same. He is someone who is deeply racist, misogynistic, transphobic, xenophobic, one of the worst people in the legislature. Like, we have run into him several times. I will not look at this man. I will not pretend that I know him. I will never interact with him. Like, he is one of the most despicable people in the legislature. Mm-hmm. Which is understood by both Democrats and Republicans in the legislature.
Correct.
Little tea for you. And now he's made it even worse by making himself look like an actual SS officer with his mustache.
It's too small. It's too.
What do you mean?
It's.
Oh, what do you mean?
It's too dark in the middle with the.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. I wonder who that reminds me of. Anyway, so Trevor Lee has really become the champion of the culture war bills, especially when it has to do with trans people. One of Trevor Lee's bills, which is a bill that allows the state to take control of local street naming and lets the legislature name any street in the state that they want. This bill in particular would rename 9th South in Salt Lake City, which is now known as Harvey Milk Boulevard. Harvey Milk was one of the first openly gay elected officials. He was on the San Francisco City Council, and he was murdered because he was gay. And this street has become a really iconic street for a lot of the queer community here in Utah. There are gay bars, there are murals of him, there's so much stuff on this street that is so central to the queer community in Salt Lake. And Trevor Lee wants to rename it Charlie Kirk Boulevard. Which, look, however you might feel about Charlie Kirk, this is not a memorial to someone who was murdered for their political speech in this state. This is a own the libs, let's take local control away from Salt Lake City, the most liberal city in the state. Equality Utah, one of the best queer rights organizations in the state, put out an incredible statement talking about, like, why does Trevor Lee have such an obsession with the queer community, especially in Salt Lake City, that he would want to rename the gayest street in the state after Charlie Kirk?
I don't know. That's crazy.
It is.
Why?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, I get that he wants to, like, own the libs and he doesn't like queer visibility or, like, queer joy or anyone having fun things in their life. I get that, but also, like, this street of all streets, I don't know. You want Charlie Kirk to be memorialized by 2 separate gay bars on the street? It's fine.
Can we talk about the local control element of this for a second, though, which I think is very ironic for a number of reasons. The Republicans in the legislature have a few key words that they love to go to anytime that they are doing anything. And local control, I would say, is their number one favorite word. And they love this as a justification for everything related to the federal government. Mm-hmm. We don't want the federal government coming in here and telling us what to do with anything. We also don't want the state government to tell us what to do with anything. We want cities to run their cities. Local control is very important.
Yeah.
But in this case, we would like to change the law so that the state can control every single municipal street and what it is named. The entire state. is controlled by the Utah legislature and their naming abilities.
Yeah, we like local control unless we don't like who is controlling that locality.
Yeah, which is particularly an attack on Salt Lake City, which they are having a battle with currently.
Yes.
Mostly related to the Salt Lake City Pride flags after the Pride flag ban.
Also run by Trevor Lee.
Which is very interesting.
Yes. This was the bill last year that banned Pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags, any flag that's not a quote-unquote official flag, from being flown or displayed on government property. So that includes like city halls and the airport and courts and schools. Like, no, you can only have the list of flags that are approved by the legislature. So Salt Lake City they gave themselves 3 new official city flags. One of them is the Salt Lake City, it looks like a pride flag with a Sega lily, a Trans Day of Remembrance flag, and a Juneteenth flag, which is also coming back up because there is another law now, also being run by Matt McPherson, is sort of in retaliation to Salt Lake City making these new flags. It says that that cities can only have one official city flag that has to be approved by the legislature. And only those official city flags can be flown in places like airports and courthouses. Now, this bill could be way worse because you can still fly unofficial flags wherever you want.
This is not what we are expecting this bill to look like. I thought we would see a bill this session that was much more of a crackdown on Salt Lake City and gave them more punishment, which maybe we will continue. There's still time for us to see retaliation.
The pride flag not being official and trying to rename Harvey Milk Boulevard.
This is pretty bad.
It's not great. It could be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse. Yeah. But that's because there are considerably worse bills for queer people in the state that we have seen this year.
Yes, there are. The fight over the flags and over Harvey Milk Boulevard, they are important, they are symbolic, but they are ultimately, in my opinion, a bit of a distraction for the bigger problems that we are seeing at the legislature for the queer community. So HB 183, also being run by Trevor Lee, is a bill that is maybe the most aggressive and anti-trans legislation that we have ever seen in this state. This is the real problem.
That's saying a lot.
It is saying a lot. It is.
It is fascinating that this bill is so impactful because it seems so simple on its surface.
It does. And that's how they do a lot of this stuff that is so nefarious, is it seems fine. It's a technical cleanup bill. This is fine. But that is not what this bill does. So let's I will tell you what it does.
Okay.
And then I will tell you why it's important. How's that? And like some of the context here, which I did not know until recently.
Yeah.
So this bill, it changes the word gender to the word sex in every single piece of Utah code. Which, again, on its face is like, okay, sure, that seems fine, I suppose. But that means that this will get rid of any protections that trans people have in this state right now, particularly in the areas of housing, employment, and hate crimes. So Utah right now is the only red state in the entire country that has in code written protections for trans people in the areas of housing and employment and hate crimes. This would make it legal to commit a hate crime against a trans person. It would just be like any other crime. There would be no additional punishment if you commit a hate crime against a trans person. You can also legally discriminate in employment and in housing if you don't want to hire or rent to a trans person.
Which is, well, first of all, I am confused by this bill because why taking away these things from people, there's no good justification for it.
No.
And it will be interesting to see as this bill moves through the session what actually Trevor Lee's justification for this bill is. Yeah. Because taking those things away and those protections, it doesn't do anything for anyone else.
No.
It's not benefiting anyone other than it is taking away people's ability to literally be safe in the place that they live. Speak of the immigration and ICE bills. But it is just a straight up attack on these communities for no good reason whatsoever.
Well, and it doesn't just do that. So that's like the first big thing it does that is really horrific. But it also does some other fun stuff. So it also locks your sex markers on your birth certificate, meaning that if you are a trans person or you are intersex or whatever reason you might need to alter the sex marker on your birth certificate, you can't. Locked forever. There is no changing that at all. Which also will make it a lot harder for trans people to not be hate crimed if their driver's license at a bar or whatever has a different gender on it than their gender. Mm-hmm. It also adds some restrictions on where trans people can have jobs, because remember, in this bill, you can also discriminate against people in employment, so that's fine. So it says that if there is any job that is under the Department of Health and Human Services, which includes things like schools and clinics and all kinds of things, there's a ton of different things, that someone who quote unquote presents as a different sex, I guess is probably what it would say, not gender, mm-hmm. that they cannot have face-to-face contact with a minor for more than 5 minutes.
How do you police that?
I don't know. It's unenforceable. It just means that fewer trans people are going to get hired for jobs. Because I don't think it really is possible to do that. But also just like I guess a couple of things. One, we're just like, we're just locking trans people in a different part of the office or of their job. Like they can only sit in the back now. Like what are we like?
Also, how are we verifying this when people are getting jobs?
You can discriminate on employment now. So, if they look different than what their gender marker says.
Show our birth certificate when
You're asking really good questions. I don't know. But also is perpetuating a stereotype, which clearly Trevor Lee has bought into this insane conspiracy theory that all trans people are pedophiles, so they should not have face-to-face contact with a minor. When, mm-hmm. again, this is not a problem. If you are interested in protecting children, there are a lot of other things that you should be doing that are not concerning policing the behavior of trans people at their place of employment.
No.
Insane.
You'd see a lot more priests being arrested.
Yeah, you sure would. And family members. Like, there's a lot of things. And then also...
Oh, we're not done.
There's more. If there is a custody dispute, if their child is gender nonconforming or if their child is transgender, if one of the parents does not support that child's transition, that is a point in their favor in a custody dispute. So now we're just getting involved in family law for no reason.
This is one of the things that's crazy to me is that Utah law and code has so many small, tiny things that impact big portions of people's lives that you never realize are actually dictated by law and can be changed so easily. Yeah. And where we come up with these ideas of like, no, let's add this little line in there so that in these few custody disputes where there's a parent who doesn't support their child, like, no, we should add that to this bill too. That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, with complete disregard for that child's mental health. Do you think if there is a child that is struggling, that is trying to figure out their position and their place in this world, and they think that they might be transgender or they are transitioning, that if their parents get divorced, that they are already probably not in a good place mentally because of that they are going to want to go and be forced to live with the person that does not support their life?
Yeah.
And their existence.
A point
and their
in their favor. Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing that's really interesting about this is that Utah has been a historical leader on these types of issues. So Salt Lake City? Salt Lake County.
Yeah, Salt Lake County. Yeah, Salt Lake County.
Yeah. So Salt Lake County was one of the first counties in a red state in the country to pass non-discrimination legislation for queer people in this state, which means that there are actual protections for queer and trans people in this state for the first time ever. And amazingly, in 2015, Utah made a lot of national headlines and they made history by being we are currently the only red state in the country that has in law statewide protections for trans people and like all LGBTQ people. This was called the Utah Compromise because it was a compromise between queer advocates like Equality Utah, the LDS Church, and the legislature to come up with a law that would both protect the LGBT community in Utah and also carve out a lot of protections for religious freedom and religious expression. It was monumental. It was a huge, huge deal. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot of work on all sides. And Utah really touted itself as being able to be a conservative state, but do things differently to help make our state a more welcoming and inclusive place for people who have been historically marginalized.
And that was passed by Governor Herbert and, at the time, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, right?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. So absolutely right.
It'll be really interesting to see Spencer Cox, who has gotten some recognition and support
A
from
ton of recognition. And
yes, because of his stances for the queer community. I mean, his speech after the Pulse nightclub shooting is one of the things that made him a national figure.
Yeah.
And the ability to lead the Republican Governors Association. And
he was on Ellen because he was such a great advocate for the gay community.
Ellen is the most important thing that he's done in his life.
Yeah.
And yet, if we see this bill pass and see him sign it, I think will reveal so much about what he is doing. I mean, God forbid, I hope this bill does not pass.
Yeah.
But this is just so contradictory to so much that has been just progress has been made, and people don't like it when you take away things from them. And it doesn't have to be something tangible and real, but taking away a protection
not
or
being
a right,
hate crimed is pretty real.
but like
but yeah,
the protection around those things and the rights to have that is not, it's not hurting anyone to have these things
to not
in place.
be discriminated against. That's not affecting anybody else.
Yeah.
100%. So the thing about the Utah Compromise that is interesting is that it was built as kind of like a compact, right? It is all or nothing in a lot of ways. It's kind of like a Jenga tower, right? Where if you pull one of the bottom ones that you shouldn't be pulling, the whole thing falls apart. And this bill, if it passes, will completely pull out the last Jenga block from the Utah Compromise, and the whole thing will fall apart. It does not exist any longer.
What the compromise being in place, especially with the LDS Church, I think is pretty fascinating.
Especially with their history with Prop 8.
Yes, and I do wonder what we will see the LDS Church if they all take a position on this bill.
I hope that they do. I mean, this is still something that the church gets credit for. It's something that the governor gets credit for, and that Utah across the country and internationally gets credit for, because it was one of the first times that religious leaders, Republicans, Democrats, and the queer community came together and came to an agreement. And they're still talking about how proud they are of that. And if the whole thing falls apart and we're carving out pieces of it to say like, nope, actually you don't deserve rights anymore, that whole argument falls apart. So I would hope that they would, because it does make a huge difference if the church is going to defend this or not. This is the fifth year in a row that the Utah legislature has considered, and if they pass this, will pass major anti-trans legislation. This is not a one-off. This is a pattern that they continue to attack this one specific vulnerable population for no reason other than political gain, without ever looking at the consequences of their actions on real people who have to actually deal with the consequences.
Yeah, and such a big topic of last session that we talked about, but we've seen it for so many years, and we haven't even talked about all of the bills that are going to be impacting the queer community this year, the drag show ban, so many other pieces that are going to affect so many people's lives that add up to really big consequences. And why we are not spending time focusing on issues like the Great Salt Lake and energy and childcare, and we just saw it last month when people couldn't get their SNAP benefits, so the legislature didn't come in to support them. And there is so much that they could be doing that they are not doing. And that's not to say they're not passing some good bills. There are good bills that we promise we will talk about at some point in time. But this is these things, they just take up time and space and arguments where they could be doing so much more.
Yeah, and civil liberties are not a zero-sum game, right? Even if you don't know anyone that's trans and that you don't understand the arguments and conversations around transgender people or transgenderism, that is not really the point. The point is that if the legislature and the government can take away civil liberties from one group of people, they can take that away from anybody. And if you think that you are going to be protected from that, and that you're all good, and that everyone that you know and everyone you love and everyone you care about will also not be impacted by the government being able to take away civil liberties from them or from you, you're wrong. Because if they can do this in this way, they can do it to anybody. And there certainly seems over the last few years, and even in this session, that there is a deep interest in deciding who has rights and who doesn't.
Yeah, and it's all about their power. This is entirely about them getting to control other people. And it doesn't matter what the community is, but they are going to control it if it's not them. If you're not the person making the laws and you're not the person in charge, then you have to be at the whim of what the legislature does. Except for when the legislature has to follow laws, then they refuse to do that. Then we got to change the courts, the people that implement the laws.
The last thing that we will say on this sort of issue, especially with this bill by Trevor Lee, is that they're going to tell you that public sentiment, or they're trying to frame it like public sentiment supports this bill. They always try and do that. But what you need to know is that these non-discrimination laws are extremely popular in Utah. No Utahns are asking for this. In 2023, a poll was done in Utah, and 86% of Utah residents support the Utah Compact.
Wow.
This is not anything that is being asked for by anybody. This is just for Trevor Lee to personally want to fuck over the trans community and to say that he did something because, once again, it is an election year.
Yep. And he does have some very serious opponents.
Yes, he does.
Which is great. Everybody look out for his election this year.
Yeah. The one thing I will ever do to help Trevor Lee is help him pack up his fucking office in the Capitol.
Hell yeah. Okay, I have no clue how to close this out, that's for sure.
Smash that subscribe button.
Smash. Give us a like and a follow.
A like and follow, can you imagine?
Well, we are officially 1 week into session, and I think have clearly seen the priorities of power and not policy that the legislature is trying to pass, and it's only going to get worse from here, unfortunately. Although we're going to try our best to keep you informed, because these decisions really, they matter and they have an impact in your life. So a couple of things to remind you of. One, we do post daily videos on our social media accounts where you can see exactly where the bills are every single day. And we have a weekly event on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. at Church and State, where we talk more in depth about bills. We give you opportunities to contact your legislators, to get involved with organizations that are advocating for different issues on the Hill, and to meet some friends and hopefully feel like you are not alone in this tough 45 days.
Yes. And if you need some hope, it's been really, really helpful, even for Jackie and I will say. I mean, we've done this twice now, and we had 300 people there the first time, and we had 450 people there the second time. And just to see that there are other people in this state that care about making the community a better place, that want more balanced representation, that want to make a difference for people that aren't just there for themselves, it is really, really helpful. And so if you need some joy and some hope in your life, would encourage you to come.
And so, we'll continue to do that, and see you out there. Classic us. See you out there. Okay.
But more
formal.
Okay.
What should we say? At the camera. Shout out to our sponsors, Pacifico.
Jackie's brother in Pacifico. And BW Productions.
Oh, BW Productions, yes.
If you made it this far, we are both amazed and grateful and surprised for that. We appreciate it. We've appreciated the support we've gotten over the last year. And as we kind of venture into these longer videos with longer recaps, let us know in the comments what you think, what you want, what we can do better, what you want to hear more about, and we will do our best to do that.
Thank you for joining us on this crazy ride and bearing with us through our first episode and any of the mistakes we've made. I'm sure we'll get better at this, and
like and subscribe.
God damn.